All right, well, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining our webinar this afternoon. This is our third installment of our summer webinar series for our current clients. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Today's topic is all around culture. So a little bit of background. So last fall winter, OutMatch acquired a company called Pomelo, which really specializes in culture analytics, and things of that nature. So we thought today would be a good opportunity to walk you all through some of those offerings and things we can do with that platform. So again, my name is Zach Berkelback. I'm the VP of our client success team here at OutMatch, and joining us today we have Drew Mahorik, who's part of our OutMatch corporate development team and actually came over from the Pomelo team, so has a lot of expertise and knowledge on the Pomelo system. So as we're going through today, feel free to type out any questions you have over in your chat box on the right, and if we have time at the end, we will be sure to answer those questions as well. So Drew, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Zach. And I'll kick things off by just covering a quick agenda of what we plan to show all of you today. So we'll do a quick highlight on the OutMatch product family. You're all, of course, familiar with either OutMatch assessments or our reference checking product. And we'll just do a quick recap on that, and then we'll dive right into the Pomelo Culture Analytics product, which may be new to many of you. We'll talk a little bit about the science behind culture and how you can quantitatively measure organizational culture, the benefits of doing so and how that can impact the organization. We'll talk through some of the specific product capabilities that our Culture Analytics product can service you with. We'll take a look at how the survey methodology is constructed, and then we'll actually jump into a live demo to showcase some of the analytical capabilities. So we'll try and spend just 10 minutes or so here in the initial kickoff deck covering these components, and then we'll try and spend 15 minutes or so in that live demo for you. And as Zach said, feel free to pop questions in as we make our way through the presentation, and I'll try to answer those as I see them come in real time or circle back to them towards the end. So quick highlight on sort of what the three key products are with OutMatch. Of course, we have our OutMatch assessment, which many of you are familiar with. This is around helping organizations improve performance, reduce turnover, and reduce hiring risk by assessing an individual's fit to a job or a role. So I'm not really going to spend any time explaining that since you're already intimately familiar. The reference checking product you may or may not be familiar with. This is basically a solution that helps save you a lot of time, your recruiters and your hiring managers, as well as improve the quality of your reference checking process by replacing the time spent on the phone with a competency-based survey that looks at someone's past experience and their qualifications for a position. And there's also sort of a cherry on top with giving you the ability to convert references into candidates. So there's another sort of full product there that we can get into in a future session. I think we have one planned for later this week, actually. But today, the main focus is our culture and engagement product, known as Pomelo. And so what this product does is it gives you the ability to quantitatively measure organizational culture, including how that can vary across different pockets of the organization, how current culture can compare to desired or aspirational culture. So we'll walk you through all of that in a visual way today, as well as how you can track how culture is shifting or evolving over time, whether you're intentionally working on evolving the culture or it's something that's happening organically as the business grows and matures. We'll also talk about the engagement measurement capabilities, as we have a pulse engagement tool built into the Pomelo product as well. So for the culture engagement product, we'll start with a little background on the science. So as you are probably familiar, culture has historically been a very qualitative topic. You know, most organizations have some set of values that they aspire to live by, but they haven't really had a way of connecting that to analytics and seeing how good of a job they're doing at actually living out that culture. And this gentleman here, Dr. Charles O'Reilly, is really the pioneer who helped change that. He has spent the past 30 plus years working on helping organizations think about how to evolve culture. He's one of the leading researchers in the country on this topic, and he developed something called the OCP, or Organizational Culture Profiling Methodology, initially back in the early 90s. And he used this methodology for quantitatively assessing the strength of a company's culture by soliciting employee feedback on the types of values that are most important or most influential in how an organization makes decisions and operates. And Dr. O'Reilly built a very successful consulting practice around that methodology, which later translated into Pomelo, which is the the product we're looking at today. That is the software version of Dr. O'Reilly's methodology, enabling more organizations to use this with greater scale and greater speed. So Dr. O'Reilly being an academic and OutMatch being a data-driven organization, of course, we have a lot of research behind the importance of having a strong culture. And we're happy to provide more and more on this, but just two quick case studies here. There's a lot of research around how organizational alignment impacts performance. There's a very strong positive correlation between organizations that are tightly aligned around a culture and how that impacts group performance. And that also is included with an individual's fit to an environment and their individual performance. So this is just some of the research beneath the product, and you can rest assured all of what you're going to see in the demo today has this academic rooting beneath the platform, the same as you would have with any of the OutMatch products. And the same is true of attrition. Here's another example where over the course of, I believe this was an 18-month period, we did a study with nearly 10 different organizations, and we looked at those who are a strong values fit for the environment and those who are a weaker fit. And the difference between the top quartile and the bottom quartile was up to 50%. And so similar to the OutMatch behavioral assessments product, of course, fit to a job is important, but fit to an organizational environment and culture is also a very important contributing factor in whether or not someone's going to be happy, engaged, strong performer, and likely to stick around over time. There were two other key individuals involved in helping Dr. O'Reilly take this methodology and translate it into a software product. One was Tom Friel, who's the former chairman and CEO of Heidrick & Struggles, an executive placement firm. So Tom's role was really in helping us think through how you look at an individual's fit to an organization from a recruiting standpoint, given his background working at the executive level, where of course getting those decisions wrong can be very, very costly. And then Greg Waldorf here was instrumental in sort of leading the thinking around how to design an intuitive product that is easy to understand, such that you don't need a PhD or an advanced degree in the field of IO psychology in order to understand the product. So the key reasons why you might want to use the culture and analytics product, in addition to what I've already touched on with strengthening performance and retention, is also engagement. So organizational culture is sort of the core foundational driver beneath things like engagement, performance, and retention. But it's also a product that can be used strategically as you're thinking about managing leadership change, going through merger and acquisition times, as you look at different subcultures and evaluate what are cultural disconnects between different parts of the organization or a part of an organization that we're thinking about becoming, merging into part of the umbrella organization. And then, of course, giving you the ability to have metrics around culture and tie that to these other KPIs, such as engagement, performance, and retention. We're giving you another dimension of evaluating the health of your organization. So there's three key modules I'll walk through here during today's presentation. One is the core culture analytics module. We'll take a brief look at the pulse engagement module, and then we'll also talk about the candidate screening, how you can connect that into the recruiting process. So starting with the culture mapping analysis, here's a quick screenshot of how we use color coding to sort of give you a heat map of parts of the organization that are strongly aligned and parts of the organization that might be more weakly aligned. And you have full customization in terms of how you break this out. So if you want to look at it across different departments or different organizational locations, you have the ability to customize that however you are interested to review the data. And we look at not only that alignment around the organization's culture today, but give you that ability to look at the desired culture. So a lot of our clients with the Pomelo product will do this during a time of reevaluation of who are we as an organization and who do we want to be. Also, it could be about just getting a quantitative measurement in place for the first time. So looking at, does our stated set of values actually reflect what our employees believe our value system to be? So you get the ability to quantitatively measure all of those. And you can segment it however you'd like. You can look at trends and insights over time. So a lot of capabilities that we'll look at here with the culture mapping piece. Of course, everything you get with our product comes through interactive dashboards and reports. So you can look at gap analysis between parts of the organization, as well as how things are shifting over time, looking at those comparative longitudinal views. You can also get managerial reports. You can see how the culture looks within a particular team. You can take this all the way down to the team and individual level. So a lot of detail that you can get into if you'd like. And then, of course, you can connect that into thinking through action planning. So how do these results of what the culture is or where cultural disconnects might be translate into action steps for how you might be able to strengthen or adjust that culture? So these are all things that the team can assist you with the product. For the pulse engagement surveys, many of you are probably doing engagement surveys already, but you might not be doing a pulse engagement survey. And the main difference and reason why you might want to consider doing pulse engagement is that it gives you the ability to monitor how employees feel about their job or the organization in real time. So engagement is something that can, in fact, change on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And we give you the ability to actually monitor what is happening from an engagement standpoint, rather than just the annual survey where you might miss important feedback. And here with the pulse engagement survey, you can intervene if things are starting to go awry with a certain individual or certain part of the organization prior to it manifesting as performance issues or retention issues. And I did see a question came in here: how and when are we getting survey data? So I will momentarily show you sort of how the survey is structured for the culture assessment. But the general idea is at the beginning of an engagement, we would do a culture survey with your employee population, or whichever part of the population you would like to participate in this exercise. And I'll show you what that looks like very shortly here. Here's a quick screenshot of how the applicant screening is laid out. So we give you insight into how individuals fit to the full organization or a particular pocket of the organization. If you have different cultural benchmarks you want to evaluate them against, you get access to an interview guide similar to with OutMatch assessments. We give you some different recommendations of questions you might want to ask to dig in more around some values type questions of how they fit to the environment. And similar to how you might use a person to job fit assessment, this allows you to prioritize which candidates are worth talking to first from that environmental fit standpoint. You also get the ability to look at candidate net promoter scoring, so tracking how candidates actually feel about the organization following their experience being courted by you as a potential employer. So similar to customer net promoter scoring, this gives you the ability to get feedback on how positive of an experience was it for this candidate, whether you hired them or not. And a big differentiator with this product is how you can also use the culture survey in the onboarding process. So at sort of a 60, 90, 120-day checkpoint, this is a way for you to see how good of a job are you doing at integrating new hires into your organizational culture. How strong of an understanding do they have of the culture at that 90-day checkpoint? How aligned are they? What is it that motivates this individual? So it's another part of the Pomelo platform that we give you access to, is some insight on intrinsic motivational drives. And we actually give you a one-page report on each employee that you might use this assessment with to show not only how aligned they are to the culture, or their perspective of the culture, how that compares to the rest of the organization, but we also give you some discussion questions to help prompt ideas of how to bring them even more connected to that culture. So I'll quickly give you a highlight on the survey methodology here, and then we'll jump into a quick live demo to show you some of the analytics. So the culture survey is broken into two parts, whether you use it with employees or with candidates. There's a short exercise that looks at someone's intrinsic motivators based on what we call a career and life visioning exercise, where it's kind of that pie in the sky childhood exercise where we ask you to, if there were no restrictions, what would you want to be when you grow up? And what you would expect is folks would pick the 2 or 3 roles that are most similar to the role they're serving or the role they're applying for. But because we require you to select 10 of the 100 different occupations, we actually get a lot of rich insight into what are the things that intrinsically or naturally motivate you. And so from that, we're giving you an additional lens into drivers of employee engagement alongside that explicit feedback in the engagement survey and the cultural alignment data. And how we're collecting the culture data from an employee standpoint is we're asking questions around, does your organization value taking initiative, or being high integrity, or being highly customer oriented? And what the employee does is they rate you and take these different values into a number of different categories. These are things that are more highly valued by us, less highly valued, somewhere in the middle. There's a couple tiers of sorting with this exercise where we're looking at more than 50 different dimensions of culture, and we're having employees actually articulate which things are more like us and which things are less like us. And that's where that culture strength score is calculated from. And this is that organizational culture profiling methodology where we're looking at how consistently are people saying that you are highly prioritizing a certain value. If the results are all over the board, that represents a weak culture. People don't actually know what you stand for. They don't really know how decisions get made or how business gets done. And that is proven through research to be a negative contributing factor towards things like engagement, performance, etc. So that's how the exercise works. And then we have a parallel version for candidates that again looks at their intrinsic motivational drives and their personal values. So instead of asking about the organization, we're asking about that specific individual and what is important to them. So without further ado, let me jump over to the live demo here. So you'll see a quick little change of scenery. And there are 3 different sections I'll quickly walk you through. First is the executive summary, which is where we give you that 30,000-foot view of what's going on from an organizational cultural standpoint. We'll then jump into the trends and insights, which is where you can zoom in on particular segments of the organization to get that team-based view. And then we'll quickly take a look at the people and surveys section, which is where we house individualized reports for both employees as well as candidates. So starting with the executive summary view, you can toggle off both the current state and the desired state culture if you'd like. The desired state culture is another parallel version of that cultural exercise I just highlighted, except it instead prompts you to think about what the culture of the organization should be or what you might want it to be in order for that company to be successful. So you have the ability to look at both. In this case, you can see that this organization has their data segmented by team views. This is all customizable in terms of how you want to look at it. But you can see that the leadership team, in terms of what they want to accomplish from a cultural standpoint, is highly aligned at that 89% culture strength score. However, if you look at their perspective on what the organization values today, there's actually quite a bit of difference of opinion. And we'll see this in the trends and insights section where we can look at the particular differences. But that is, in fact, a negative sign or a red flag, because when you have competing ideas, when you have some folks on a team who thinks it's most important to be highly innovative and fast moving, you have other folks on that same team who think, no, we need to be much more conservative, take things slow, be detail oriented. That creates a natural conflict in how work gets done. And that's what we're trying to highlight in examples where people have competing ideas of what the organization's values are or what the values should be. Clarity is always helpful from a cultural standpoint and for helping with the work productivity. In addition, if you're tracking engagement data with us, we have that highlighted here as well. So this is a more traditional Likert scale 1 to 10 type question. How do you feel about your colleagues? How do you feel about the culture? These types of things that are more of a traditional measure, but not as much of a scientific model. But you do have the ability to track that here. And then I'll scroll down to give you a quick look at how the value analysis is set up. So I'll start with that leadership team example. So we saw that the leadership team is highly aligned on what they want to accomplish from a cultural standpoint, which in our model, because it's a forced distribution, you have to rank certain values above others. You can see that represented by a clear focus on 2 of the 7 cultural value pillars that we have highlighted here. And there's more than 50 cultural dimensions that we look at, and you'll always have the ability to export that data to see that raw, nuanced view of how each value is getting scored. But from a visualization standpoint, we have it highlighted here in 7 key pillars to help you understand what's the key narrative or the key story of what's going on from a cultural standpoint. So it doesn't mean they don't care about collaboration or they don't want to be transparent. It just indicates that they have a strong focus on wanting to be an adaptive and innovative organization, as well as being high integrity. And if you plot where they believe they are today as an organization, you can see that integrity and adaptability are 2 areas where they actually believe that they are struggling. And so you can see that as a huge focal point for this organization and something that they are likely to prioritize and working to address. There's a big disconnect between where they are culturally and where they want to be. But you don't have to only look at the leadership view. You can also plot in different teams to see how different parts of the organization perceive the relative importance of these different values. For example, with the sales team, if we isolate that as an example, you can see they agree it's not a super high integrity environment, but they actually believe they're operating in a bit more of an adaptable environment. So the amount of work to be done there to sort of achieve that leadership team's desired culture might look a little bit different with the sales team than with perhaps the operations team or other parts of the organization. And so the key thing to highlight here is sort of what you want the culture to be and what perspectives are of the culture today. And then on the motivational side, we're also collecting data on sort of what motivates individuals, and then in a more aggregate view, what motivates the larger working groups. So this is most impactful and actionable on the team-based view, but we do give you insights on it's most impactful on the individual view, but we do give you that insight on the team-based view, or again, whichever segments you're organizing this in, so you can see that as well. In this case, you can see the customer service team is highly motivated by a leadership development opportunity, whereas other parts of the organization might be intrinsically motivated by different aspects of work. So I'll jump into the trends and insights section here to give you a quick view on how this looks when you zoom in on particular segments. So you'll see the same segmented views available here as from the executive summary page. In this case, we'll just look at the customer service team. And you can see as you measure or remeasure culture and cultural perspectives over time, you'll get trended data longitudinally. In this case, it's static since I'm just using a demo account, but you can see sort of the overall strength of this operational group and how things are trending over time. And then if you want, you can get all the way down to the individual level to see not only what is the aggregate view of what the value system is within this particular organizational segment, but how do particular individuals perceive the culture relative to their team or peers. So in the case of Catherine, as an example, you can see she has a highly consistent view of cultural values to the rest of the team. And Grace, as a different example, is relatively aligned, but there is this disconnect around how results-oriented she believes this environment is. And while most of the team thinks that's one of the top two most important values, Grace has a different idea. And so depending on how into the weeds you want to get in sort of taking action on strengthening team cultural alignment, you could actually incorporate this into the next one-on-one with Grace to involve her in seeing what could we do to be more results-oriented as an organization, which has a couple byproducts. One, you help strengthen the culture around that as one of your values, and you help address potential areas of disconnect with Grace. Because when someone has a totally different idea of what the organization values from their peers, that can lead to feelings of isolation and therefore engagement challenges. And this might not even be known or recognized to Grace or the manager in the absence of being able to actually look at these differences and how they perceive the values of the organization. As you have the ability to anonymize this if you so choose, most of our clients do not anonymize it by virtue of how the survey is structured. There's not a right or wrong answer. This is just your perspective on what the culture values. But if you do have more questions on that, you could follow up with your account manager to understand more of the benefits of anonymizing versus not anonymizing. I'll quickly highlight the motivational analysis here. So it's laid out similarly, where you can see sort of the overarching key motivational drives for any particular business segment, and then you can plot how particular individuals may be intrinsically motivated. And so if you took a one-size-all managerial strategy for coaching the team, knowing that the team tends to be leadership development oriented, that might do a lot for stimulating Catherine and keeping her engaged, but with Grace, that might not go as far. And so this actually gives you some insights and some tips into sort of where to focus in terms of how to interact with someone to strike their intrinsic motivational drives and keep them highly engaged. We will also highlight some of the core cultural behaviors. So I mentioned you can always export this full list of more than 50 different cultural components, but we do highlight the most and least representative within any segment you're looking at for a quick view. And then if you are tracking engagement data, we have that anonymized. Engagement data is always anonymized given the more sensitive nature of that information. And you can have that trended here, as well as you can see in broad categories sort of how the engagement scores are playing out. Now, lastly, jump into the people and survey section. And I'll start by just quickly pulling up an example of an employee report. So we'll use Grace since she's the example we've been speaking to so far. So again, this is just an individualized report looking at her overall perception score. So this is not a reflection of whether or not she's a good fit for the team or environment. It's just how consistent is her view of the culture relative to her peers. And when that's lower, that reflects potential isolation or disconnection from that culture. And so in this case, we know the results orientation is sort of the key talking point and an opportunity for you to involve Grace in brainstorming ideas of how that team can become more results oriented. And then on the motivational standpoint, you can talk about how this individual is motivated relative to their peers. So again, just some different discussion type questions to help structure that conversation, which you could also print out and share one-on-one if you so choose. And then I'll quickly highlight the candidate side as well. So this is a case where you are actually looking at how strong of a fit a particular person is to a particular environment. In this case, this is someone with a very strong compatibility, Sophia Loren. You can see both on the motivational dimension, she is similarly wired to a lot of other people in that environment. And from a cultural standpoint, Sophia's personal value system is highly aligned with the organization, or in this case, the customer service team's value system. So there's not a lot to talk about there. It's a pretty good overall fit. I will quickly pull up an example of a weaker fit as well, just so you can see a comparison. Here we'll pick on Keanu Reeves at a meager 29% fit score. And you can see on the motivational side, quite a number of differences in terms of how this person is driven and how others are in that environment. And their personal value system, where they place importance, again, differs quite a bit from the environment they'd be operating in. And what that means is they're going to have to act in ways that are less natural or less preferred in order to assimilate with that environment. So what we're highlighting here is, this person might have the right job fit, they might have the right personality or skill set, but if their values are slightly different, then that can lead to friction within that environment and highly increases the likelihood of them not becoming a strong performer and becoming disengaged, and at its worst, attrition, leaving the organization. And then we do have these interview guides here as well, with some different behavioral questions related to that individual and their fit to the environment they'd be stepping into. And this RSC thing you're seeing is a scoring rubric that we include. If you do want to sort of standardize and implement that into your recruiting practice, we make it easy to sort of do a scoring rubric there for you around the relevance, specificity, and content of their responses. Something that we had developed at the request of a number of our clients. So that's sort of the quick abbreviated walkthrough of the Pomelo platform. Let me jump over to the slide deck here, and I will turn it back to you, Zach.
Perfect. Thank you, Drew. And yeah, so again, the goal of today was really to give you a taste of what this might look like. As you can see, there's lots of possibilities and lots of different things that our clients are starting to do with some of these culture analytics. So a lot of exciting things that can happen here. So if you want to learn more, we're happy to do a deeper dive with you or answer any questions. Just reach out to your client success manager, and we can absolutely set up a longer demo and get some of your questions asked and go into it a little bit more in depth. So Drew, if you go to the final slide. So just as a reminder, we have one more of these sessions left as of right now. So this Friday, we're going to be going through our automated reference check process. So if your organization does any sort of reference check, this is a really cool feature that we have that really automates it, takes a lot of time off of your recruiter's hands, and it actually gives you some real insight and analytics into your reference check. So we would love to have you join us this Friday at 2 p.m. So again, thank you everybody for your time today. We appreciate you joining us, and hopefully you got some good insights out of our cultural tool, and we hope to see you on Friday. Have a great afternoon.